Get my creaks out of my chair. Okay.
Yeah, the chair. Blame the chair.
Oh, I gotta figure out where the hell this thing creaks. It's something to do at the assembly underneath. I gotta oil something. It's a pain in my ass.
Phrasing.
Yeah.
Are we doing phrasing again? I just want
No,
to know.
I mean I have Crohn's, so I have a pain in my ass
Okay.
like all the time. But anyway, welcome everyone. Hi to the very first official episode of the Wartburg and Fusion Entertainment review. I am MrWartburg, and alongside me is the aforementioned Mr. Fusion.
Greetings and salutations, everyone.
So like I said, this is our first official, or I said, this is our first official episode. We did a pilot that is up on the channel that you can watch there. This one will be hopefully a lot shorter, because that's the point of the pilot. We were tinkering, tightened some things up, and we'll be, hopefully, having a little bit more of a concise show, because I really don't think anybody needs another hour and a half podcast in their life. There's enough of that out there. Like, I watched two kind of funny ones today. They just off the fucking rails. Like, just...
Oh, yeah.
Just craziness.
Yeah, man, honestly, I've done podcasts that have been, 50 minutes, and I've done 3-hour podcasts. I don't understand how I do the 3-hour podcast, but,
yeah.
At some point, the law of the diminishing interest happens. It goes, I think, probably about that hour and 15 minutes. Are like, yeah, I want to go get some ice cream or go take a shit or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, we'll keep it short and sweet.
Yep. So speaking of short and sweet, let's just get right into the what are we watching. So Fusion, what have you been watching, reading, playing? Like what in entertainment has been piquing your interest in the 2 weeks since we've recorded our last episode?
Well, game-wise, I still dip into Fallout 4 again on the PC. The other game I've been playing has been Ark, because Ark had a Crystal Isles is an expansion on it. Basically, they just put a bunch of crystals on an island, like it says Crystal Isles. Played that a little bit, and then have still been reading, finishing up Why the Last Man, and once I get that done, I think I want to go back and reread Akira, just because I ordered the box set, which I'm trying to redo a whole shelf of all of my old favorite manga, and then watched the first 3 episodes because I was given no option to watch the entire season 2 of The Boys, which is pissing me off. Bill and Ted 3 was a most excellent movie that we could talk about in a little bit, and then I went back and watched a couple of old MCU movies. So I watched Endgame actually last night I watched Endgame, but I also watched Captain Marvel last night. And I think going back, I feel confident in my reviews previously on Captain Marvel. So I feel like, this is probably the 3rd time I've watched it, sat down and actually watched it, the first time in the theater and then 2 other times at home. And I feel like, 3rd time watching it, nothing's really changed in my views of Captain Marvel at this point. So, yeah. How about you?
All I know is in that movie, I was very, very happy they remembered. Oh yeah, we should get Clark Gregg back in for this one. He was a fun part of that movie.
I mean, it made sense. It fits in. It creates a much more stable timeline of who's been with S.H.I.E.L.D., just to throw it in. And of course, we get the ever popular whatever happened to Nick Fury's eye. We get that story resolved. And of course, a lot of people weren't very happy about that. Well, the other thing people aren't happy about, and we could touch about it in a little bit, is The Boys with this whole breakdown on season 2. People are they're slut shaming the reviews on Amazon right now, which is hilarious. So, yeah. Typical internet at its best.
Speaking of The Boys, for me, for my what I've been watching, the showrunner Eric Kripke, I've been rewatching a lot of Supernatural, because it's the final run in 3 weeks. The final 8 episodes start to air. So, and that's seasons 1 through 5. It's maybe one of the best runs in TV, especially on the network side, ever. Supernatural 1 through 5 is damn near perfect. And that's Eric Kripke. It was basically Eric Kripke, the guy behind The Boys, doing a Neil Gaiman story, and it was awesome. It was very much so, he even admits, I just, straight up stole shit from Neil Gaiman. And they, both have a mutual admiration for each other, so that's pretty cool. Excuse me. I actually also rewatched most of Endgame. I had an infusion treatment, this past Sunday, up at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, and they had an Endgame on their they have their, OS on all their TVs, so you can just watch, movies kind of on an airplane. Shitty speakers, it's the speaker in the bed, so it's just dog shit. It's just constantly blown out. All the music was trash.
But if you close your eyes, you could pretend you're at the drive-in.
Exactly. Speaking of drive-ins, that's Bill and Ted. That was where they had the biggest driver in the revenue, was all the drive-in theaters, which I actually kind of want to go to one now, but the nearest one for me is 2 hours away, so kind of a pain in the ass. But yeah, what else have I been watching? Playing. I finished more TLC for Arkham Knight because I haven't been doing much video gaming because I've been doing stuff like this.
Oh yeah, all the
It's
wood
entertainment
burning.
adjacent, and that's been my wood burnings. I have a bunch in the shop
Nice.
right now that are waiting for finish. So that's gonna be my
Just as
extra life.
a bit of a teaser, I've got my eye on the Serenity one, by the way. Just to say it.
Well, that one I'm not doing for this one. That was more of a
Oh,
which type of finish do I do? Like, do I do a flamed finish or do I do a clean finish? So, and Shadows wanted the clean finish, so I went with the clean finish. But I'm gonna add in a
oh,
supernatural one because
okay.
it's 15 years of TV coming to a close. It's crazy. Longest running, I think, American live action show. I think it's got to be up there. But yeah, 15 years. It's pretty crazy. So yeah, that's really been it for me. Other than like just randomly like rewatching one-off episodes of stuff. All my shows aren't back yet, other than The Boys, which we'll get into later as part of one of our specific Wafer Wire topics, just to have its own concise topic. And speaking of, let's move right into The Wire and get through
All
some
right.
of the news that's come out in the last 2-ish weeks. So, Fusion, you're a big PC tech guy. You know, I know you were geeking out all about the NVIDIA card reveal, and the
Yep.
AMD one is coming out in October, so we'll probably have something on that too. But what were your thoughts on the NVIDIA like video card reveal they did like last week?
Yeah, I have a couple of friends on Twitter that we chat about this stuff just because they're tech hardware enthusiasts like myself. They're not as in depth and they don't have decades of just building their own PCs like I do. But I will tell you, man, in the 20 some odd years plus years I've been doing this, like building PCs, this is probably the most exciting year I've seen in terms of innovation. I mean, like what Nvidia what Nvidia did was they just pretty much just reset the table with the 3000 series RTX cards because I mean the 3090 it's a beefy MFer, man. Like that
It's
son of a bitch
huge.
is
Yeah.
it's fucking huge. It looks like a brick of heroin, like you see like on Narcos, like
Yeah.
a big like 6 pound brick. That's what it looks like. I don't understand. Like it's supposedly running on just a standard PCI slot. There isn't like a super slot new modification board that you have to get for it, which sounds great. But I mean, I just don't think that the bolt-in screw can hold that bad boy in place because
Yeah, it's gonna need
it's
a bracket.
yeah, it reminds me of the old Radeons from about 10 years ago that were just they weren't very innovative in terms of the tech, but they were like big beefy systems. I think that's when we started really juicing up the RAM. That's why they were so big at the time. We really hadn't improved like the size of the flash RAM. Um, but the 3090 is killer, man. That's on my board to buy for $1,500. But what gets me, Warburg, is that the 3070 the benchmarkings that they claim outpaced the RTX 2080 Ti, the 2080 Ti,
Yeah.
which was the big GPU last year for
And that
15
was
to
twelve hundred
$1,800.
dollars.
Yeah, it maxed out at about 18, depending on where which
When
brand you
yeah.
went with. Like if you
Yeah.
went with an Asus, you were spending 17.99 on it. But and the crazy thing about it is that 3070 is going to go for $500.
Yeah.
You and I were talking about this, man. Like this makes the mid market like open to game at 4K on PC
Mm-hmm.
now.
Yeah, which is nuts
I
because I
mean,
did not plan on a monitor budget for 3 new 4K monitors, but I mean it's gonna happen. That
yeah,
we're cresting that kind of like where like the resolution tech like TVs, monitors, like the visual fidelity kind of
yeah,
goes first. Now we can do 4K. We can do there's a couple 8K things out there, but like then the tech that supports that stuff, like on the entertainment side, the video rendering side, kind of lags behind that curve.
sure,
Now both are on the downslope to mass adoption, like
yep,
in a big way, like
yep,
beyond majority way, which is where it gets very, very cool because it's just
yeah,
all cool shit fucking everywhere, and it's finally
yeah,
come
no.
to PCs in a big, big way.
And just so people say, well, why should I pay $1,400 for the 3090? Well, here's the thing: that son of a bitch, it can game in 8K at 400 frames a second,
Yeah,
guys. That is like, I mean, there are very few games out there that you can get an 8K resolution because, I mean, a 8K monitor is going to run you a few $1,000s right now. But what that does, Warburg, is it creates a demand for user like end user market, like a friendliness to it. Like so we're
yeah,
going to see 8K monitors come in at a much more solid price point now because
yeah,
they're going to say, well, shit, they're going to sell a ton of cards. Well, we have an opportunity to really sell a few more. So let's we were pricing it at $1,000 to $1,200. Let's bump it down to $800 for an 8K monitor, and let's go. Because there's very few games that are doing it right now, and I don't expect a lot of games to go in 8K for quite a while. But what this does is that you don't have to dual up your cards, SLI or Crossfire them to get 4K 60 frame per second. At this point, you spend that $1,500 for one card, and you could go. You're at 4K with no problem. Like you don't even have to overclock that bad boy, and you're good. Which is crazy because we're talking about the 3090. Very few people are talking about that 3080 card because it's like, why pay $800 for that when you could pay $500 for the 3070? Because it's really a tough thing. Do I want to go because there's a 3060 that's coming out that's going to be about $300, I think.
Yeah, that's going to be their the NVIDIA cards, from my understanding, at least the market I see them pushing towards is like the mid-range, especially those lower end is the mid-range. So like the 3060 is going to be like the mid-low, like the 1060 was. The mid's going to be the 3070, like the 1070 was. This is going to, I think, mirror a lot of the 10 series in terms of where the cards get placed and priced. Because on the 1080 was like the night, like unless you were like needing a supercomputer, you got the 1080, right? Yep. Like so the 3800's more like the 1080 was, and then so the 3700 is like the 1070, but the 1070 that could like do 4K and all these all these extra frames, and like it's just a crazy leap from where we were even just 3 years ago when I bought my rig. Like it's hugely different, and also cheaper. Yeah, which is crazy.
I mean you can build a really good eco gaming system for about $1,200. Say $500 for the card, $700 for motherboard, RAM, hard drive.
Yeah, and depending on the CPU you want to go with, like that's not a weird price point to think.
Nope, especially with the Ryzen's coming. I know there's the 3900X series.
Oh God, I can't wait to. I'm like drooling thinking of what I want to do for my next PC. Oh, it's gonna be awesome.
I built this PC a year ago, and I'm like already like, oh man.
Yeah.
Well, the good thing is I bought the Crossfire motherboard, so I can pop in a new Ryzen 3900 in there, and then I'm definitely going to buy the 3090 RTX 3090. So I can,
I want to get. I need a video. We need a video for this when you plug it in, turn it on, and when the fans kick on. Like I want to see that.
Well, I'm gonna do a dual camera, one with a camera pointing to the lights, because I just want to be sure we don't have a surge in this house.
Yeah, you turn the computer on, like you start running like Cyberpunk or something, and just everything dims.
It's like when Tony Stark started up the arc reactor.
Yeah,
in that cave, and how the lights just go down for a little bit. Yeah. That's probably what's gonna happen when I pop in that 3090. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But it really creates a really exciting time for the mid-market gamer. It really does, because a lot of these folks, and because you said, fuck it, I'll buy a $500 car. I wasn't budgeting for it, but $500 when I'm gaming at 4K.
Yeah.
What you said is basically what the vast majority of the market is. They say, I really can't afford to spend $1,500 for a video card, because that's more than what I paid to build the rig. But at this point, they're like, okay, but I can do 500. So, NVIDIA is going to make a shit ton of money off of that 3070. They're going to make a ton of it, just a ton of money.
And like that, the high end card, I mean, kind of like when 4K was like just coming out, like there was some incredibly expensive, video options for that. 8K is similar. This is one of the first like major cracks in that door. Right, because once it's flung open and all the way open, that's when the content side is going to come in. That's when they're making better cameras for it. Obviously, they have cameras that can do it now. There's just nothing that can really render it effectively without an incredible high-end PC.
Yep.
That cost way more than $1,400 for a graphics card. Those kind of PCs that can render 4K, circa last year, crazy. Like you're talking $5,000 minimum for that computer. So now it's going to become. Like, can you do it sub 2,500? Like, that's a huge leap within a year just because of a video card. So, like, this is one of the first major cracks in the door for 8K on, like, content side. Like, for people, whether they're filming stuff, whether they're doing it in gaming, whether it's, like, even just stuff like fucking YouTube. Like, now, I mean, you can upload in 4K, but, like, that's going to be a few years down the line, obviously, because that's more based on the internet infrastructure. But on the content side, like, the resolution, like, that's a big fucking crack in that door of 8K's coming. So that's really exciting for me from a future perspective of like down the road. We're going to look back and go, this is where that ball really got started, was something like this.
For me also, it's all about the stress load on a system. So because these new GPUs are so beefy that they can handle max settings at 4K at 60 frames for the 3070 or 8K at 100 frames per second for the 3090. Based off of the current internet standards now, you can max out and not create a massive stress on your system. And I think that's the problem people are having is balancing out the stress, to try to max out on their system, to play games, to do all of that, to create content as well as run an editor in the background and, running,
Hmm.
maybe they have a capture card. Like they're just so many things connected to their system that GPU gets bogged down when it's trying to
Yeah.
do multiple things. At this point, these cards should be able to handle the current infrastructure that we have in place to max it out without creating any type of lag or any type of stuttering or anything. So it should be very fun. Hopefully, companies like Twitch and YouTube and whatever Facebook gaming, they have their server loads ready because there's going to be a lot of kids that are going to max out their shit as soon as
Oh
they
yeah.
buy these cards. They're going
Yeah.
to try they're going to try to push everything through the system, and they better have their servers ready because
Yep.
it could be like Zoom on the first day of school where everybody's trying to work and every kid is trying to access their classes, and Zoom crashed last week or 2 weeks
Yeah.
ago on the
That
first
was
day of
that was
school.
crazy.
So it's like, and I'm just like, come on guys, you knew you were going to have a massive spike in server load. Come on.
Yeah.
Hopefully Twitch is smart enough to know that once these cards come out, you're gonna see a lot of folks to really try to max things out when they
Yeah.
send things through the pipeline.
That's gonna be interesting. And speaking of content side stuff, let's get into something that came out like literally last Friday, and the new episode is dropping this coming Friday. That's The Boys season 2, which dropped on Amazon. So Fusion episodes 1 through 3. Obviously, let's start with the fact that it's not a single season binge, which Amazon's kind of transitioning to. I believe the Expanse was all one season. That all dropped as
Yes.
season 4, but they're transitioning into a more HBO Max, Disney Plus type
Hulu.
original content release where it's weekly.
Yeah.
They're wanting to get away and I don't know if maybe this is because Netflix has like the binge market kind of on lock, given how much fucking original content they pump out compared to the other competitors. Like they dwarf them, and like they put out like 50 shows like within like a month. Like that's
Yeah.
crazy. That's nuts. So 1 through 3, like are you a fan of going to a weekly, starting with kind of like a mini binge, or do you want it? Would you rather have it all at once?
I'd rather have it all at once. I'm an old guy here. My TV viewing is set up in blocks of time, honestly. So, I really have to work around my schedule because I do have a busy work life. So, for me to say, on either a day I'm off during the week or on the weekend, I could put aside, a 4 or 5 hour block and watch half a season, or spend 2 blocks on a Saturday and Sunday to watch the new season of a show. But like let's just say a Daredevil, which is an hour long, 13 episodes. That's 13 hours plus of content. I break it up into over 2 days, and maybe I even stay up late watching it Saturday night into Sunday morning. I prefer it that way. I get why a lot of like some of these sites like Hulu's been doing it forever. Like my wife hated Handmaid's Tale was weekly. She would just going crazy. She caught up in season 2, and so she caught up all the way through season 1 and had to wait weekly for the rest of season 2 onward. Um, I get why they're doing it. I mean, I really don't know the full story. Is it due to server load? I don't know what their reasoning behind it is. Is it a marketing
I
strategy?
think it's more marketing because I think they want to go after that like prestige television for their specific originals. Not all their originals they said are going to do this. Just
Yeah.
like their marquee ones. Like I assume Expanse season 5 will do the same thing. Obviously, this is because I mean you look at The Mandalorian was weekly, Watchmen was weekly, and like lit the world on fire. Like every week, everyone was freaking the fuck out because of how perfect that show was on a
But see,
weekly basis.
Watchmen was a little different though because they do it weekly because that goes through HBO's cable channel.
Exactly.
That's
Like they
that's
have
their mindset.
that kind of market, but like where Disney doesn't. Mandalorian was
Yeah.
weekly, and they kept that. Like I remember week to week, everyone was going, "Oh my god, Baby Yoda, Baby Yoda, Baby Yoda," every single week for 8 weeks, not a weekend, not a month, 8 weeks. That's fucking forever in this modern internet age. You got
Yeah.
everybody talking about your show every single week, and The Boys is good enough to be on that level. Like The Boys is a phenomenally good television show.
I agree.
So I get, and especially The Expanse. The Expanse, I think, is one of the greatest sci-fi shows ever so far. If they can actually stick the landing like the books did, but I don't know how the fuck they're gonna do the time jump stuff. Like, holy fuck! Like, it gets weird. Those books get out there, man. like 30-year time jumps, everyone's in cryo sleep. Like, fuck, it's gonna get weird. But like, they have some shows in their roster, Amazon does, that can warrant that every week, once a week thing. I think they just
Yeah.
gotta transition their audience to expect it, which is why like the
Yeah.
boys would do 1 through 3, and then going forward, one a
Well, I
week.
mean, okay, first off, I caught up with the boys because I hadn't seen it until a few weeks ago, before, like, just before we started doing the podcast. Loved season one. Thought it was a
Mhm.
phenomenal, gory as all hell,
Oh yeah,
very very dark. But Carl Urban, man, he gets to be his natural New Zealand a-hole personality. Like that's I don't know. He's so fucking natural with it. I don't know if that's really like he talks like that, like just you know,
yeah. Like,
you know,
he just dials it
throwing
all
out
up to 11, and it all works.
I don't know, but he's brilliant in the show. Um, Homelander, you fucking hate the guy. Like
Yeah,
he
what a
just
great
you know what
casting.
he reminds me of season 3 of Wilson Fisk and Daredevil.
Yeah.
Like just a person that as the season goes on, you just hate him more and more and more and more. And at the same time, there's some really fucked up things that just make you wonder what's going on in that guy's head, kind of at the back end of the season.
Oh yeah.
But the great casting on the show. Really, season one, they just kind of hit you right at the start. Boom! Here's a murder within a few minutes. Like just
Oh,
boom,
how
this chick
fucked up is that when
explodes.
he's holding her
Whoa!
hands? Like, oh my god, it's
And
so
and just
fucked up.
because it's just a really good idea taken from this concept of after some of the like Civil War, this idea of the responsibility of collateral damage that heroes cause
Hmm.
in society, and how we really should weigh that with what the good they do versus the little, not little because it's not always little, like the damage that they cause to help you know
Hmm.
society as a whole. Some people do suffer because of it. With Sokovia and in Age of Ultron, thousands
Yeah.
of people. Man, they never really tell you how many people die. You just know a lot of people died in
Hmm.
Sokovia. So it just kind of brings that whole thing up, and so this talks about that in a very clever way. The branding of the characters, the whole they're a brand, they're a company with Vought. It's just
Yeah.
brilliant. And at the end of season one, you're just like, oh, dude, is this really how we're gonna end season one? This is so fucking like just frustrating. We kick off into season two, and I was a bit shocked how season two started the first few minutes in, but it got really good.
Hmm.
Um, I really like where they're going with this, but at some point there has to be a big payoff at the end of season two involving the Seven. There has to be a major payoff,
I
like
have a
whether
feeling.
whether it's the Deep or A Train, there has to be a payoff with those
I
two.
actually have a feeling it's going to be Black Noir, given what I kind of spoiled myself on with the comics on
Okay,
Wikipedia. I have a feeling
okay,
that's where they're going. But like, speaking of specifically 1 through 3, um, sorry to anyone who's watching the video. I keep having to wipe my nose every time I have the lights on. I don't know if it's a psychosomatic thing. My nose just runs. It doesn't always do that. It's only when I'm recording shit. I don't understand it. It I don't know. Maybe it's because I do the wood burning and it like irritates, like that irritates my nose. But I always have the lights on, so when I turn the lights on, my nose just runs. I don't fucking
so
know.
your nose has this Pavlovian thing with the lights
Maybe,
now. Is that
I
what it
don't
is?
know. I mean, it definitely makes it easier to do the wood burning. But so speaking of 1 through 3, like number one, they continue. It's almost a direct pickup, not quite, but it's
Close,
close. It's
close.
not a huge time jump, which I was worried about because I mean, you end with a character having a heart attack in A Train, and like the guy's going on the run, and then I mean, it's only a few days. It sounded like
Is it days or weeks? I don't know because
it's
there's something
it's it's if it's weeks,
where
it's less than 2 weeks.
it's less than, it may be less than 2 weeks, but there's something with Huey and Starlight when they're talking. I get the impression it's been
That
a
it's been a
while.
bit, yeah. Like they've been communicating on the
Yeah,
sly
for a while.
for a
Yeah,
little bit, and that's a great continuation. They're not dicking around with that story. Like there's a little bit on Huey's side of the will they won't they, but they don't. They kind of couch that in the there's more important shit going on. Like
yeah.
like and like they let Huey have the win in episode 3 when Vought maybe gets brought down. Who knows? The deep stuff. As soon as I heard it, fucking Patton Oswalt. That's the gills.
Yeah.
God damn, what? I've seen some people hating on the casting. And I'm like, okay, if you need someone to come in and voice the guy's gills, Patton Oswalt's a pretty goddamn good choice.
My wife and I were talking about this because she wants to catch up. So at some point, probably this weekend, I'm gonna get started rewatching season one with her.
Nice.
But she walked in the middle of the I'm gonna call it the peyote trip.
Oh
I don't know
yeah,
what it was,
yeah,
but anyway. But when Patton Oswalt pops up, I told her, I was like, and she recognized the voice, and I was
yeah,
like, Patton Oswalt has done so well for himself in the comic book movie
hmm,
realm, because he really doesn't have the personality to lead a character in any of the shows that he's been
yeah,
on, but he's so involved in every single aspect, whether it be any of the DC, Marvel,
yeah,
Flash, and just like, I mean, just anything, movies, films, TV. He's been a part of the comic book like realm. He's he's the Clint Howard of the comic book movie world. That's
yeah.
really it.
I mean, he's got such a great cult of personality around his like nerd persona that
Yeah.
putting him in anything is kind of a no brainer. Like him
Well,
on
and you
Agents of
recognize his
Shield,
voice.
it took me like 30 seconds. I was like, I know this voice. It's muffled. It's because it's muffled because he's got the jacket on. I'm like, I know
Yeah.
this voice. It's like immediate. I know it. And then he opens it. I'm like, fucking Patton Oswalt. All right, it's
Yep.
gonna get fucking weird in here, and it
Yep.
got weird. Now
Yep.
that leads me to another point. The Deep. Should they even like in the comics? The Deep doesn't really have much to do. Like, not really part of the story.
No.
He's just
No.
kind of his own thing. They make a few Aquaman jokes, and he's off on his own thing, and he's just not part of the story. At least for the original run. So then, obviously, they've really elevated his character. Same with
Yep.
even Queen Maeve, who
Yep.
I have a feeling where they're going to go with her, and it's going to be heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's going to suck. Given where we've had on previews where Annie eventually joins the boys, like that's been in the previews. She eventually gets with the guys. Like she meets up and probably gives some like rousing speech to get them off their ass. But how does she get there? And I'm pretty sure. Can we go in? Do we want to do like I don't know, speculation? But something's gonna happen with Maeve and it's gonna suck. And then, but the Deep, they're like redeeming this guy who's a sexual like deviant, like he's messed up
Yep.
people and like sexually assaulted
Yep.
people. Like, is that something they should do? Because I've seen people that want to. People complain about the stunt casting with Oswald, but like this is an actual like you're putting the rehabilitation of a sexual assaulter like front and center on a mainline
Yeah.
entertainment property. Like, is that something
Yeah.
that what did that sit weird with you, or was that something like you kind of like seeing this
More so,
weirder side of the story?
it sat weird for me in season one, just because there was that stretch in the middle of season one where he became more sympathetic, where he became like
Mm-hmm.
he wanted to find a cause and a purpose in his life, and of course, because he talks to animals, to the sea creatures, he felt like he should be their savior, or
Mm-hmm.
their savior, and of course that didn't work out because of who he works for.
Yeah.
I think honestly, what you're probably seeing is they really can't do much in terms of character development right now with Black Noir, as opposed to the books. So you're seeing more with the Deep, and I think they didn't realize how they created a lot more of a story with the Deep
Mm-hmm.
that they have to follow through at this point.
Yeah.
But the good thing about that is this can go beyond the comics. This
Oh
can go
yeah.
beyond that
Yeah.
at this point, because you have these longer, because obviously Homelander is the end game of the show.
Yeah.
So you just got to get ready for him to be a fucking monster for 3 or 4 or 5 seasons here at this point. It's probably going to be 4 seasons, maybe 5.
Yeah.
But I think he's the ultimate end game to this whole thing. But at this point, you also can stretch out their storyline with the Deep. Like, maybe he does circle back at some point, and is it going to take a dark turn, or is it going to take a comedic turn?
Mm-hmm.
Or I feel it really hard for them to have a road of complete redemption for the guy, just
Mm-hmm.
because of where it's such a hot topic in society right
Exactly.
now.
Yeah.
To just say, "Oh yeah, all is forgiven," I don't think that's going to be a case, but it may be a Theon Greyjoy type thing where he kind of
Yeah.
circles back in a longer arc, and there is a redemption there for him, but it's not a massive payoff for the viewer. That's what I
Yeah.
think.
I could see that. I could definitely see
And,
that.
and it may involve Maeve, honestly, because I think I know where you're going with Maeve, and I think I kind of am steering towards that with Maeve, and I think it's a lot. I think that is going to have a lot to do with Black Noir as well,
Yeah,
where
I think he
her
might be the one
story.
that kills her because she's trying to defend Annie, and that's
Yeah.
how like Annie gets out,
Yep.
and how she
And it's
how she escapes. Because it's clear in one of the previews where Homelander is kicking her ass. So it's like, how does she get out of that? Because she's not that strong.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Maeve comes in, and remembers the hero she wants to be, and her arc has been like even just as an extremely lower tier supporting character. They've got so many different levels of interesting stories within this show.
Yep.
Like it's a really deep, like constructed show just based on the characters. like even A Train, complete fuck up and asshole, like has an actual like others like an emotional core to his story that you
Yeah.
understand. Like, he didn't have power, he didn't have money growing up, like, and he just wants to hold on to what he's got, and that drives him to do extreme things. And he
Well,
does it, and
it
he also
also
fucks up.
well, the great thing about it is it mirrors a professional athlete. He's getting
Yeah,
older, he's
yeah,
getting
exactly.
slower, so he has to pop juice so he can keep going
Hmm.
because he wants to make the money and keep the fame because he grew up with nothing. So
Exactly.
it makes a lot. It makes a lot of. It's like, okay, so there's a lot I don't like about A Train him. Like he's kind of like Skylar White in Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
You hate you find her annoying. You don't like her. What's like that means that actress is doing her job. The guy playing A Train is doing his job because you're just like,
Hmm.
God, there's just so much I don't like about this guy. But then you really realize, okay, there's a lot of depth to his story and
Yeah.
what's motivating him to do what
Yeah.
he's doing.
It's a really well realized, like, not quite secondary antagonist, maybe tertiary antagonist to
Sure.
what's going on in the main story, and also still is a good character, like an interesting character, not just an on paper villain, which is really
Yeah.
nice. And that's always something I really like about, like, going back to Supernatural. Kripke was great about working in characters like that, even just like one off random characters you'd see for like 2 episodes would just be really compelling people that would be cast with great character actors.
Yeah.
So that's something I think Kripke does really well, and that's something I think the boys continues to do really, really
Well, and
well.
speaking of the boys themselves, okay, at this point we're kind of like wondering what exactly we're going to get the payoff with Billy Butcher. What's
Yeah,
going to be his payoff at this point? It gets more confusing as the season's going on with just the whole thing that ended season one, the big cliffhanger. Huey's not on good terms with him at the beginning of season two, so
with damn
it
good
create
reason.
yeah, it just creates this whole dynamic of, I mean, they're just a group of misfits, that
Yeah,
they have no powers and they're trying to take down the seven. It's okay. This is going to be very interesting. So I like you. I see like there's going to be a good story to finish season two, but the payoff in this is going to take multiple seasons, like season four or
oh yeah.
five, is where the boys really pay off. And I want to see a little bit more on Frenchie, what his story is, because he's
Speaking of, he gets a whole episode.
okay. Good.
And on top of the 8 episodes, they're doing a Billy Butcher movie that was going to be an episode, but they're like, we don't really have an hour 10. We do have 35 minutes of just Carl Urban being Billy Butcher after Homelander, scoots him out before he comes back in episode 2 or
Yeah,
end of season 1 or end of episode 1
season
maybe.
one.
That period of time, it's all Carl Urban Billy Butcher for an entire like mini movie that they're going to put out middle of the season, they said. Just like,
Okay, so
I'm
I
fucking
gotta
in.
I gotta ask this: have you ever eaten at a fucking Tony Cicero's? Because this place is getting a lot of run from this
No,
show.
but it doesn't look, I mean, it looks kind of like a TGI Fridays kind of place.
An
Like a
Italian
yeah,
TGI
like
Fridays. Yeah.
yeah, kind of like it looks like like that kind of like not motif or like style, but just it's a sit down restaurant, that just has mediocre versions of good food.
But they're getting a lot of run from this show, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
I'm sure. I wasn't even sure if it was like a real thing because
Yeah.
so many of these things are not, like they're just fake shit. But sometimes it happens where they're real. So,
Yep. Yep.
and one other thing I want to touch on, I really want to see Stormfront get her ass kicked because fuck
Oh
Nazis.
God. Oh yeah. It just from the very beginning you realize she's not gonna have a very good. She's probably gonna be dead pretty soon. Like right when you meet her, you're like, yeah, this chick's not gonna make it to the end of the season
I
two.
think, yeah,
Like
she's
she's
gonna be
dead. She's so dead.
she's the secondary antagonist that's gonna go up against Homelander and lose.
Yeah.
At least physically. She's probably gonna like win for a little on the social media side, get everybody on her side, and then Homelander's gonna like run a hand through her chest and she's dead. And
And just as a heads up, I think Tony Cicero's is a fake place. I don't know.
it
I
doesn't
don't know.
surprise me. Like
But
I
it
don't
just
know.
looked like
Like
some place that I don't know. I was like, is this a place up north? Because
it
it
might
sounds
be.
like it would be a place.
I mean, it sounds believable, and it's just randomly weird stuff. And like, I'm very curious to see where they're gonna go. Like, I'm very much so obviously gonna be watching every single Friday when this drops. So we'll have maybe some boys conversations going forward on
Yeah.
this show as like a two episode catch up, or maybe a end of season kind of recap. Since we're only doing this every other week, obviously this is a weekly show. But yeah, that's kind of anything else you want to add in on the boys before we move on to a couple movie topics.
No, I really suggest if someone is very wary about it, it's taken the darker aspect of superheroes, kind of like what Brightburn was supposed to do,
Yeah, or
except
what
a
Zack
complete
Snyder dreams of, but
yeah.
actually is good.
Yeah, but it actually, yeah, exactly, it's
Yeah,
good.
like
It's it's ri- it's an IP that's written by someone that knows comics, and
exactly someone that
how to drive
understands
heroes.
all this really fucked up shit. It's honestly, it kind of reminds me of what I would expect an R-rated James Gunn superhero story to be. Like, it's a really fucked up superhero story that's funny despite it being so dark and fucked up.
Well, I mean, we have Suicide Squad coming from
Exactly. Like
James
that's
Gunn,
one of the reasons I'm so excited for Suicide Squad is
so
that stuff like The Boys works. Like you
yeah,
don't have to be dark to be dark. You can be dark and be fucking hilarious.
yeah.
Like they fucking run a speedboat through a fucking whale. Like that's so fucked up and funny. Like you see it coming and you're like, "Oh, they're going to do this." And then they do, and you laugh. It's like,
Well, like, how
and then
about
you're
this?
thinking, "Why am I laughing? This is so fucked up."
The CIA agent in the first episode, of season 2,
Oh my
you're
god,
just
I
like,
didn't see that coming.
okay, like, boom, oh shit, okay,
Yeah,
like, it
there's
just
just this like,
these,
oh shit, fly by your seat of your pants kind of tone
yep.
to everything, and it's like I fucking love that, and I'm like, man, that's kind of why I'm so excited for Suicide Squad because it feels like this could be something James Gunn would have made. And I'm like, fuck
And
yeah.
if your early assessments on the movie, there may be quite a few of those guys dying in Suicide
Oh,
Squad.
oh, there's no way Nathan
quite a
Fillion gets through that alive. No way he's
quite a
coming out
few of them.
alive.
Quite a
Eh,
few of those guys will be dying just because of just the oddball
And you
deaths
know he's gonna
that
kill
can
his
do.
brother. You know his brother's gonna die.
Oh, the Weasel,
Like,
yeah, Weasel's dead. Come
yeah,
on.
him and Fillion are fucked. It
I
ain't
mean, it's like,
happening.
my prediction: King Shark is going to eat Weasel. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's something like that. Just something really
Yeah.
fucked up and just totally, totally out of nowhere. And it's just gonna be like, what the fuck? And they move on.
Yep.
Like, you don't have to sit on everything. You can just move on sometimes.
Yeah.
And I
But
appreciate stories like that.
I highly recommend, if people haven't watched it yet, sit down and watch season 1 of The Boys. It will pull you in. There could be a lot of
Worth
fucked
it.
up moments, but it will pull you in.
Yeah. Fantastic show. Speaking of other things that have come out since our pilot episode, that would be a couple of movies that dropped in theaters, or one in theaters and digitally, and the other just digitally. That would be Bill and Ted Face the Music, or Bill and Ted 3, and the Disney live action Mulan, which is not technically a remake, it's more a reimagining of the original source material. But it kind of gets confused with being a live action remake, like Lion King or Aladdin, where even though it's not really, because it is actually based on the Chinese myth, not the 1998 movie. Obviously, like you see here on the screen, we've got a few things, but I mean, we'll start with the one of us has actually seen, and that'd be Bill and Ted Face the Music, and that has been seen by Mr. Fusion. So, Fusion, what did you think about Bill and Ted?
Most excellent. Seriously though, it's a good movie. At its core, it's a um, midlife crisis film. So if you're younger, you probably won't relate to it. But someone like me can really kind of relate to this whole topic of guys that they were set up to. I of course I wasn't set up to save the universe or anything like that, but these guys were, and then they never really did it. And then it's about them, being old and having to figure out what happened, and all of a sudden they're tasked with having to save the universe on the spot. And so, there's a lot of nostalgia in it. And what they do is, they really squeeze in good callbacks, but they don't overdo it. At the same time, it's very sentimental. And what I really liked about it was, you can tell they really showed a lot more. I mean, the guys are still bumbling idiots to a degree, but they have also matured in a way so they don't completely sound like 20-year-old, you know,
Yeah,
rock heads. They actually sound a little more adult. Now there are a lot of moments where they go completely just, dumbish rocks, but I mean, there's a good story there. The daughters, the character of the daughters, really entertaining. The story itself, the storyline, there were a few moments where it seemed like, okay, we're kind of pulling things together, but the end game for it makes a lot of sense. So when it does, when you circle back to a lot of the callbacks and everything, and honestly, people will want to know this. Yes, there is a healthy tribute to George Carlin's Rufus. I mean, his character and his legacy plays a key role in the movie, which is great. And I really liked it. The music was good. The ending was interesting, very sentimental ending, honestly. So you're going to go through this whole movie laughing your ass off, but at the end of it, it's going to kind of hit you right in the feels because, like I said, it's a movie about coming to terms with your life at a certain point as you get older, getting older and coming to terms with things. And so there's a key moment at the end of the film where you're just like, okay, this really kind of made me emotional. I didn't expect it to, especially from this movie. but it's a good way to just finally send off the story of these two guys. I really liked it. I'm sure with it being split, it may not have done very well on both platforms. Honestly, though, Warburg, I don't think it would have. I mean, a $25 million budget on this film, and the CGI is spectacular, by the way. I don't think this movie would have been like a $200 or $300 million movie. It probably
No.
would have been like maybe like 80 to $90 million worldwide.
Yeah, and for the
just
budget,
because,
that's amazing though.
yeah, seriously. So I liked it. I think people that are slamming it really didn't get the original, the first two. But like I said, the callbacks were good. They were subtle. They weren't overindulgent, and the story it had a few tweaks where it dragged a little bit. But most really good movies have. Everyone can find something about even great movies. That are problems. At some point they drag. Usually in the middle is kind of a common thing with even the great dramas and great Oscar-winning movies. They kind of in the middle drags a little bit, and this one does drag a little bit, and then all of a sudden it kicks back up really fast. But I liked it. I thought it was good. I would tell people if you've watched the first two, definitely watch it. You'll feel nostalgic and you'll enjoy it. So yeah.
Sounds good. I'm definitely going to be checking it out. I need to actually watch the first two and then the third one, which I will. Like they're on my much watch list. I have a master list of things I haven't seen or things I'm recommend to people. I shoot them the Excel or Google sheet that I have together of based on genres and types of movies and then shows and stuff of basically premiere stuff. Bill and Ted is definitely on that list because Bill and Ted.
Now, I
will
say this. There is a major cameo in this movie by a rock and roll icon. I'm not going to say who because it could be anyone, but I will tell you because this person is one of my favorite rock and rollers. The cameo scene is fucking hilarious. It's very short, but it's fucking hilarious.
I know Weird Al is in it for 2 frames in the credits. That's all I know about this movie so far. That and that they got William Sadler to come back as Death, which is
yeah.
Well,
the storyline with Death is great. The storyline with Death is great, but the payoff, I will tell people, it's the payoff. Don't expect him to be all the way through the movie. The payoff is kind of towards the second and third act. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a movie about characters having kids, so they kind of need to be a part of the story.
Have a story.
So that's kind of a given. And again, $25 million, that's a very cheap movie. And if it had been able to come out in a regular box office season, I wouldn't say it would have cleaned up, but it's got Keanu in his peak Keanu years. So people would have came and seen this movie and it would have been fine. The biggest driver of their what was it, 2-some million, 2.4, something like that. Biggest driver was of course drive-ins, but at drive-ins you have limited capacity, limited revenue. Theaters aren't making much money, so there aren't that many of them. Even just years ago now, though maybe going forward they'll come back in a slightly bigger way. Hopefully we'll see a few pop up more in outlying areas, which would be really cool because you need a lot of space. But the tech behind it's come a long way too, shortwave FM transmitters. That wasn't a thing when they were putting up a lot of the older drive-ins, So hopefully it'll be something that I would go next year if there was a drive-in that popped up an hour from me. I'd go see movies there. I'd drive that hour.
I would too. I would go to a drive-in, especially if they could fix the audio situation.
Yeah, my car's got nice speakers, so fuck it.
Yeah,
let's go.
Yep.
So that would be my thing. But obviously, this is a movie that over time is going to make up its budget on the Blu-ray side and on the digital side. This is they're a cult following thing anyway. They're going to sell the Blu-rays. They're going to sell it out on VOD, or not sell it on VOD. They're going to sell a lot on VOD. I think they went through Vudu. I think it was the first one, at least on the link I saw, was that it was a Vudu release for $20, which is not much.
It's also it's on Prime for $25 to buy.
Yeah, and I just use Vudu as my main hub. That or Movies Anywhere, because some of the Vudu ones are not on Movies Anywhere. There's a weird Lionsgate Disney thing, because I think Disney's the people behind Movies Anywhere. Lionsgate and Disney don't get along apparently on the digital side. John Wick will not show up in Movies Anywhere, but it does on Vudu. I don't understand it. I own it both through I think it was, remember UV, Ultraviolet? That was where I got John Wick 1 and 2. The digital code was for. But they only show up in Vudu, nowhere else. Not even Google. Just fuck. What? There's some weird rights issues with digital movies, man. It's fucking weird.
Very, very
Speaking
weird,
of digital movies, our next one that neither of us have seen, maybe for different reasons though, is Mulan, which came out on Disney Plus this past weekend. I think it was a Friday release, was it not? Was it last Tuesday?
I think it was earlier in the week because
Might have been
Bill and Ted
Tuesday.
was Friday.
Yeah, Bill and Ted was Friday, and that one was a little earlier in the week.
Yeah.
Now, reviews have been mixed on it overall. I mean, for 1998, was it 98 or 96? It was 98.
'98, I think. Yeah.
That one's like just it was not like maybe the best Disney movie ever made, but it was definitely in their haymaker Renaissance animated movie years, and is it was a worldwide phenomenon at the time. Had its own like McDonald's sauce and menu and stuff. Like it was a
The
huge thing.
Szechuan
Like it
sauce.
was a huge thing. This is not that.
Yes.
It doesn't seem to be anywhere near as good. Like they made a ton of changes even from the original lore. Like I mentioned, it's based more on the original myth of this legendary warrior who fought as a man even though she was a woman, and then eventually retired and went about her life. And so they've changed a lot. Like there's some weird stuff with this like Phoenix I've heard, and it's just fucking weird. But like there's a reason I don't want to really watch it until it's free, which is in December. It comes out for free on Disney Plus in December. So Fusion, if were you planning on spending the $30 to watch this?
No, and I know when we first talked about this, and of course when the internet broke about how some of these movies were going to be released
Mm-hmm.
on online for for a higher price point, there was a lot of complaints. And my counter to that was, if it's a movie you want to see when you go to the movies, you're going to spend about $30 to go. You spend about
Mm-hmm.
10 to 12 bucks for the ticket, depending on the theater and the time of day you go. But by the time you buy a meal or drink and some candy, you've already spent close to $30 all in. So it was like, okay, I have no problem spending $30 for a movie that I want to see. I'm just not really into, just because I enjoyed the first Mulan, the animation movie from '98, uh, but I haven't been wowed by this one, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. There's just something when I watch the trailers that just feels like it feels a little sterile to me. And that's
Mm-hmm.
my concern, is that usually with the trailers they create the most energy they can, and I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that.
I agree. Like I've been reading a lot of reviews, and one of the things people mostly complained about was like you cast Donnie Yen to be the general that like trains him. He doesn't get to fucking do anything.
Yeah.
Like he's Donnie fucking Yen. Like what are you doing? It's like there's like this weird what are you doing like mentality to a lot of the weird like they try to mix like wire fu with like traditional Western fight choreography, and it apparently does not work on a lot of scenes. Like there's just some weird shit where like people will be fighting normal, normal cuts and stuff, and all of a sudden people are fucking running on walls and clearly on wires. Like weird shit that like it's like a mishmash of styles that doesn't really fit. Plus the weird changes to like the story from what people in the Western audiences do know because of the Mulan movie. And it
Animation
also
movie.
like they try to make it, more culturally appropriate for the actual, legend.
Sure.
And then they also miss the mark on that apparently in a lot of ways from what I've been reading in reviews.
Okay.
Like they add in an antagonist apparently that was not in the movie. It's the eagle is like a person. She's like a shapeshifter witch. But then it's like, but in the original like actual cultural lore, they don't have witches. Like they have spirits, but they don't have witches. That was never a
Yeah.
thing anybody would say. And everyone now they're
Yeah.
just spouting off like evil witches and terror, like they're using the wrong terminology and stuff. They just like constantly kind of miss the mark from what I've been reading. And again, I have not watched it. I don't really plan to because like I just don't understand why it was made. Like who was screaming for a Mulan remake? Maybe in 2018 if they were pushing it as like a 20th anniversary thing,
Yeah.
maybe. But like, why? Seems so weird. Like, are you
But
chasing China that much? That much to waste all this money on a movie that was just like because their live action stuff has not been doing as well.
no, it hasn't.
So man, they just really wanted to get into the Chinese market, and then they cast a white director, and she clearly kind of maybe didn't hit the mark so well.
Well, I think a lot of it, like you just kind of jump in. I think what you just said, it's the live action market that Disney really wants to grab a
Yeah,
hold of. It's really, I mean, because we know what their wheelhouse is, and that's those animated movies. They push those out there, and they make a
yeah,
ton of money.
yeah,
And I think for them, they want to just really expand their movie catalog a bit more after acquiring Fox and getting
yeah.
all the Marvel content as well. They feel like, hey, Marvel was able to take their printed animation stuff and turn it into live action and make billions of dollars. Well, let's do that same thing. And the Jungle Book, the Lion King, I just really haven't, like, I watched them and I just really feel like they just really missed the mark. They do.
Oh, speaking of
They
live
do.
action though, small like trivia tidbit that's definitely going to be like a geek trivia thing down the road, like pub trivia stuff.
Okay.
Jason Scott Lee was the lead in the original live action Jungle Book that they did.
Yes.
He's the villain. He's one of the villains in this live action. Exactly like 20 years apart, or something like that.
Oh.
Like he's the only person who's been in 2 live action Disney adaptations as different characters.
Okay.
Which is so bizarre. Like it's one of those weird little things where he can only be in. Oh, it was every 28 years, and then somebody was like, he'll be like this like old wizened martial arts leader for something in like 28 years in some other Disney movie because he can only do it every 28 years. Yeah, I love little bits like that. But speaking of Disney, let's transition into another one by way of transitioning to another one, which is that because Mulan's not doing so well from what we've seen. And again, we don't know the numbers behind Disney. They don't have to release it. Private company. Disney Plus is their own platform. There's no box office receipts, anything that's really tracking this, unless they tell us. And even then, is what they tell us real, because it's Disney. So who the fuck knows?
Yep.
But maybe because it's not doing so well, or maybe because that one's having mixed reviews, maybe they're pumping the brakes a little bit. And you brought this story to my attention right before we started, and that was that maybe they're pushed internally looking at maybe pushing back Black Widow, even though nothing official has been announced yet. So what was that story?
So it came through via Warner Brothers and Wonder Woman 1984. So what's going on right now with Wonder Woman is that it's that Warner Brothers lack of confidence in just female characters, I guess. Even though the first movie did
I think
awesome.
This one's more their not confident movies will be a thing in theaters.
Okay, well, let's just say that's the case then. Whatever their motivator is, they're following Black Widow. So the reason why Wonder Woman is they're thinking about pushing Wonder Woman back to December or well beyond December, maybe to January, is because they are hearing and it's being rumored that Marvel is looking to push Black Widow to December from November. And it just, my theory, and I told you, the first thing when I saw this story like a couple hours ago was that's probably because Mulan's not doing very well in the first week.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
They honestly, I can see Disney putting a number in their head saying, okay, we have to do, the normal box office number is what for a blockbuster anywhere between $50 to $100 million. Let's just say on average, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's just say but because it's at-home purchases, people may group up together. We have to do $20 to $30 million in week 1, and it's probably closer to like $4 or $5 million, and they're like, shit, because it's a blockbuster movie. How much was the budget on Mulan? $100 million, maybe
easy,
more,
if not more, because they did a lot of location shoots.
Well, and that's why when people tell me, well, I can't pay $30 to see Black Widow. Well, you have to remember, guys, they have to recoup a $200 million budget to make that film. Now, whenever you hear budget, you take that number and you multiply it 1.5. Why? Because of the marketing they spend. They spend anywhere from 50 to double, 150 to 100% of the original movie budget on marketing. So if the movie was $200 million, you say that Black Widow cost Disney and Marvel about $300 million to budget for marketing and for the shooting of the production of it. So for them to go and say, okay, we're giving it to you to watch for $30, they know that they're not going to be able to get $120 million in week 1 because of the downloads.
Yeah.
So that leads me to believe that the reason why they're looking to push Marvel's looking to push Black Widow to December is hoping that we have a vaccine in place in November. The numbers start getting a little better. People are going to rush out in droves to the movie theaters if there is a viable vaccine, because they just want to get the fuck out of the house. And where's the first place you can go is the movie theater, because you can take family, because you're off for the winter holiday. Okay, well then we can really do good numbers as a return performance art, like a venue. If and we could pack theaters for a week on end. Like they could be daily, could be completely booked. So instead of making $150 million, they can make $200 million in that first week. And that's why they're thinking, okay, let's push it back a little farther, because for me, it's Mulan didn't do very well in the first week.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
That doesn't surprise me. That, and like you mentioned the vaccine, like also maybe part of this that came out is that they pushed in the UK, pushed their vaccines like on pause. Like, whoa, something's going on. People are getting sick in droves from this maybe from this vaccine. Maybe it's something else. They're doing a lot more study on what caused the reaction.
Sure.
Like all the major people are putting their vaccine stuff on pause right now because of what's going on in the UK with that study from, I think it was AstraZeneca that came out like it was a couple days ago. It was like, whoa, we got a lot of people getting sick that took this vaccine. But you also have to look at causation, correlation, like what caused them to get sick. Maybe it wasn't the vaccine. Maybe they all just got exposed to something else. Like that can happen. So that's going to be really fascinating. Yeah, that, and I do think the Warner Brothers side, just based on the pivoting they've done, the changing they've done in the last year, I don't think it's because it's a female character. Though maybe a little bit because Harley Quinn didn't do as well, but Harley Quinn's also not fucking Wonder Woman, right? Like she's not top tier coming off a very successful original movie, like in Wonder Woman in the first one, where that did gangbusters at the box office and has
Sure.
really great cultural kind of cachet. I really do think it's more that I just don't think, and they haven't built HBO Max into a platform where they can sell the movie direct,
Sure.
like Disney has with Disney Plus. They have the platform through HBO owning that platform, but they don't have a revenue earning stream there other than direct subscriptions.
Sure. Makes sense. Makes
So
sense.
I think it's more than worrying about the theater situation and like recouping the money than anything else. Because
Sure.
I mean, this so far they haven't even announced plans for Wonder Woman 3, probably because they're still waiting on this one, and who knows if she even wants to be Wonder Woman, a couple years down the road when they can get back to actually making big blockbuster movies.
Because she's in her 40s now, right? Or she's
Exactly.
going to be in her
She's
40s.
yeah, she's I think late 30s, early 40s. So it's like, how long does she want to do the role? Do they bring in Donna Troy? Like, what do they do? Like, I don't know. Do they recast? Who knows? It's gonna be weird. Like, especially just given how this is gonna draw everything all on the production side for years to come. So I do think it's more the theater worry than it is female characters. But yeah, like the Marvel thing. To get back to that, so we can then segue is Marvel also Black Widow has a lot more. Oh, we're gonna watch this fucking movie than a live action Mulan. Like
Sure. Sure.
people really want to see that movie.
Yep.
Like when that trailer dropped, that that lit the world on fire. Like everything Marvel does. Like the momentum is there. So I get having like a soft launch with Mulan. Maybe it didn't go so well, but you also have to kind of remember nobody really gave a shit about Mulan. Like I
No.
don't remember this ever being like oh well, we're all excited for this. Like Aladdin had more because it had Will
Yeah.
Smith instead of Rob Williams because of he's no longer around. So and that one didn't do well. Like I didn't think this would do well anyway, even at a regular box office because
No.
nobody wanted this movie. Like just so weird. But so I'm curious to see how seriously they take the failure or less than maybe what they were expecting. Because if
Sure.
they push Black Widow, that's gonna suck.
Yeah.
Man, it's gonna suck. I mean, we'll still have plenty of content to watch, but it's just gonna suck because I really want to see that movie.
But if they push Black Widow, then they're going to have to push the Eternals back.
Yeah, like they're gonna
Sure.
push everything back.
Like everything MCU related has to get pushed back because of their story mode. That
Yeah,
all of these films are tied in together in some way,
and
shape, or form. So
it's gonna be
yeah.
interesting. And speaking of interesting, or maybe less so interesting and more just kind of sad and somber, and that is related to the MCU, and that is the passing of Chadwick Boseman. Let me put this on the. Let's go to your cam. So you're on the main cam right now. But
Okay.
so since we recorded last, what day was that? I have the. So it was the day was it the day we recorded? The day I
No, it was
uploaded it.
the
day
day
I
you uploaded
uploaded
a
it
few days later.
was
Yeah.
the 28th that it was announced that he passed away. It
Yeah.
was I believe it was colon cancer, pancreatic
Yes.
cancer.
Colon cancer.
It was yeah, colon cancer sounds right because I don't think it was pancreatic.
Yes.
Yeah,
No, it was colon
looking at
cancer.
the
So
Polygon article, yeah, colon
so
cancer.
43 years old, just a few months older than me. It was heartbreaking because it took everybody by surprise. And I think you and I think we were all on Twitter just having just a normal evening chat
Yeah,
when all of a sudden this banner just popped up, and it's just from Chadwick Boseman's Twitter account from his family saying, after a 4-year battle with colon cancer, he's passed away. And it took. I remember I got it like within seconds, and I just retweeted it and I said, oh, holy shit, guys, oh my God, this is awful. And I remember looking at my timeline, it took people about half an hour to really sink in. Like as fast as it was trending, I don't think really people really, I think
yeah.
people thought it may have been a joke or something,
Well,
you
you
know?
also remember we're coming off that huge Twitter hack with all the verified accounts too. Like that was like a
Yeah,
month ago. Like
yeah,
that was huge. So like there have been tons of celebrity death hoaxes and
yeah.
but most of them were because with people we knew were sick. Like we didn't even know he had cancer.
No,
Like let
no.
alone that anything was wrong.
'Cause, Wartburg, I did like I backtracked it in my head. So in 2014, Marvel announced Phase 3, and that
Mhm.
was when they did the announcement of Civil War,
Yeah,
and that how Chadwick had been cast. I mean, there was a press release days before, but that was the
yeah. They brought
official
him on
like
stage and
on
with
stage. So
RDJ and
that was summer of 2014. He was diagnosed in 2016. They don't say when. So Civil War had filmed in 2015 and it released in 2016. So, but he had started filming in late 2016 or early 2017 for Black Panther. I'm gonna say it was late 2016. So at this point he's either in pre-production or he is in full-blown production when he was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer while he was doing Black Panther. Here's the crazy part about this, guys. That wasn't the only movie he filmed through
He
the
did
last 4
several
years. He did like 5 movies, 5 or 6 movies.
big
I mean,
movies,
this,
like not small
yeah,
indie projects.
he was Thurgood Marshall. He was Jackie Robinson. He was T'Challa. I mean, like he in a very short span of time in his acting career, because I know he's been acting for a while, but in a very short window of that career, the back end of it, he played some very pivotal roles on film. And we talked about this and tweeting back and forth and everybody discussing it. It's heartbreaking because with T'Challa, I always do. It was a good character to bring into the MCU because he was African and he was a black hero that people could really rally around that had been around for a long time. Like, you know, um, Captain America is Sam Wilson now on in the MCU, but in the comics that was a fairly recent thing, a few years before
Mm.
before the MCU pushed in that direction. Spawn unfortunately is a '90s character, totally '90s character, but Al Simmons African American, but that never really picked up. A leading superhero that was a black man never really picked up in
Mhm.
mainstream culture. But I always felt that T'Challa and Black Panther would have been a perfect fit. I just didn't realize how big it was going to be in the African American community in this country. Like, I mean, I know kids. He was their hero, and it's heartbreaking to see this happen. But I didn't realize how big. I thought it was going to do it decently, probably like Doctor Strange numbers at the box office. It made over $1 billion, and it created a whole culture in American society, which was great because then you had people that wanted to go back and read about T'Challa and the Black Panther.
Yeah,
Oh, he was an Avenger. He was a man without fear when Matt Murdock like semi-retired. He was a part of the Fantastic Four. Oh, he married Storm of the X-Men. Like, yeah, this guy's character is really rooted in
yeah,
Marvel. Like there's a lot of history with him in Marvel comics over the decades. So I was very happy that he got the part because I had saw him in 42 and I thought he was brilliant in 42, Chadwick Boseman,
yeah,
and I thought he was great and I thought he was wonderful in Civil War. Was so excited, and we had talked about this previously in the Marvel podcast that we all did as a group a while back, that the MCU podcast. I loved the casting, the script. I loved so much about Black Panther. I was so frustrated with it that third act. I was so frustrated with it because the CGI and the fight scenes at the end
yeah,
were just awful. But then you come to find out a lot of that had to do with Coogler being forced. His hand was forced by Marvel to get this done so we can get into production of Infinity War and Endgame. So, um, you know, uh, but through that whole thing, through Black Panther, he was training 5 hours a day while he had stage 3 colon cancer, and at some point he was, it went up to stage 4. And I said this a while back too. Civil War, he looked in great shape. Black Panther, he looked a lot thinner. In Infinity War and in Endgame, he looked really, really thin to me. And I was like, okay, maybe it's just with his age, he's getting closer to 40. Maybe he just doesn't want to stay bulky, or that's just his
yeah,
body's not responding that way. Because if you notice, Chris Evans in Infinity War and Endgame, he's not as bulky as he was because he's
yeah,
closer to 40 now too. It's a lot
yeah,
harder to keep that muscle on at that age, at this age. And so I was like, okay, it's no big deal. But then a couple months ago during the quarantine, someone took a photo of him out in public and he was frail. And
yeah,
they were supposed to begin pre-production of Black Panther in the coming months, and I was like, there's no way that guy is probably 140, 150
yeah.
pounds. There's no way this guy's going to get like to be 180 by the
No.
time they start shooting. So I was like, there's something not right here. And of course, people were worried, but then the story died down really quick. And
Mhm.
then a month later, we find out he had cancer this whole time. And it's just I respect him for the work he did. Watching all the interviews about the guy, he looked like a great person. He obviously would show up at all of these hospitals to talk to these kids battling cancer and secretly battling his own,
Yeah,
war with cancer. And I'm glad that we got what we got from him because he's cemented in Hollywood, but he's cemented in the comic book realm forever as he is T'Challa. He
yeah,
is the king, and that's great. And it's unfortunate that he lost his battle, or the way it ended. But I really I don't know what's gonna happen next. That's probably another thing to talk about too, but it was a very sad moment. It hit me hard just because he was the same age as me, and, it was one of those things where it just kinda opens my eyes. It's like, man, just one of those unfortunate reminders that life is so short. It's very
Mhm.
fleeting and short. So, but, at the same time, I watched Black Panther that a couple days later, and, just sitting down thinking, "Man, this guy was brilliant. He was amazing as the character, you know?"
Yeah. And speaking to that point, one of his co-stars on the last movie he did, or at least that came out, was "Da Five Bloods" on Netflix. It was
Yeah.
their Vietnam era story,
Yep.
and one of the co-stars, I believe his name is Clark Peters, kind of a smaller character actor, but he's been in a lot of stuff. And he came out and said, like, and this was not as like an insult thing. He said, my impression of Chadwick, coming into the movie was, oh, he's this big Hollywood star, and then all of a sudden he shows up on set with this huge entourage, and they're pampering him and making sure he's, all his little needs are taken care of. And he thought, and he said, I thought it was, he let the fame go to his head, and then it happened. Like, the news dropped that he died, and then he came out and was like, talking in interviews about the movie because it had just dropped too. And he was like, "Yeah, I thought this, and then I realized he was dying of cancer. Like I was an asshole, and because I just didn't think that was possible, and I was an asshole." And he was like, "And it's just a reminder to just pay attention, like not just pay attention, but just don't assume the worst. Like don't like. I mean, having Crohn's myself, like a severe chronic condition that's not really ever going to go away. I hope people don't assume shit about me that I don't want them to. So I totally understand him not saying anything because like people 100% they treat you different.
Yep.
So I 100% get the keeping it private. Like I respect the
Sure.
hell out of that. Like
Sure.
that's insane. And it's just crazy how much work he must have put in after finding out he had cancer. Like to not shut down, but to just fucking go harder
Yeah.
is just extraordinary.
But not only just harder, Warburg, but the pressure of being
Yeah.
being a part of I'm not talking about just the MCU, a multi-billion dollar IP. I'm talking about the Black Panther becoming a multi-billion
Yeah.
dollar IP within that, a sub within that.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot a load he had to shoulder at that point. A lot of people, like, just an entire section of our culture, their eyes were turned on him.
Yeah.
They kids saw him as King T'Challa. He couldn't go anywhere without people saying Wakanda forever. It's like he had really awoken a level in the comic book world, a section that a lot of comic book nerds that didn't really understand. But he pulled in a whole other section
Yeah.
into it, and so that's a lot. And at the same time, like you said, he was still doing other movies. He was still working on other projects, and it's
Yeah.
like, while he was doing these major roles for Marvel, which, I mean, it obviously wasn't about, I don't want to tell anybody. It was about, we don't know what went through his mind. If he
Yeah.
felt like,
Yeah.
we don't know if he was thinking, I gotta keep going, and I can't tell anybody because I don't want to create a problem with all of this money that's being spent on me to do these movies. Or maybe he just was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna beat cancer. So why should I put 3 or 4 years of my life on hold? I just got this role for me to just say, guys, I can't. I got to go battle cancer. He did both, and I mean, at least we have things to watch during, to know,
Yeah.
like, during this time he put out amazing work while he was still battling
Yeah.
cancer.
And like any response to that kind of news is totally
Yeah,
valid. Like
yeah,
for whatever reason, I mean, you find out something is life changing because you have stage 3 colon cancer just out of nowhere. Like that's I can't even like contemplate that because I've never thankfully had to deal with cancer,
sure,
but I that's just it's just such a like hard thing to have to like stare down, and he did,
yeah.
and unfortunately
Well,
it took his life, but
yeah,
I believe I'm trying to remember the Stuart Scott quote, but it was it's not like losing to cancer isn't like dying or anything. It's you beat it by just living.
living your life, yes.
Yeah,
And
and
one thing at the end of that quote he said was, you know, when you can fight, fight. When you can't fight, rest and let the people that love you fight for you. And that's really what I've taken from this, is that it sounds like the people that were around him that knew, really, when he would struggle, they would do their best to keep him going. And it wasn't about, hey, you got to go work. It was just like, hey, pace yourself. But I think that just motivated him even more whenever he felt like he was tired or struggling to just, okay, I got to keep going. And of course, it obviously looks like the last year plus is where it really got bad to that stage 4 level, and it just metastasized and took over. And in seeing him in that picture a few months ago, it was like, okay, that made a lot of sense, but I hated to be, as a cancer survivor, I will tell you this: when you're first diagnosed, there's so many things that go through your head. Everyone responds differently. Like Walter White in Breaking Bad, he noticed the doctor's fucking mustard on his tie. Like you just like for me, I was making jokes, just random jokes about stuff because we all process this kind of news differently. To be told that, hey, I I could it may not be bad or it may be really fucking bad. I don't know yet, but all I know is at this point I have to wait and see. But I'm told that at this point it's not good. And so for him it was like, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep going. You know what? I'm diagnosed. We got Black Panther. Let's film. Let's work out 5 hours a day. And man, I'll tell you what, if you guys don't work out regularly, working out 5 hours a day for someone that is healthy,
Insane.
it's insane. And imagine if you're going through cancer treatment while you're doing that. Jeez.
Yeah, it's just and like almost incomprehensible amount of just effort
So when
and
people
drive.
say, so when people give, because this is, it's the internet in 2020. Everyone has a fucking opinion, and when somebody tries, because there's always that counter, that edge person, edge lord, whatever you want to call them, that counterculture type mindset. When someone wants to say, "Oh, what he did was not telling people was irresponsible," bull fucking shit. That's his own personal business.
Yeah,
Um, you know, if he really felt like he needed to tell Marvel Studios or tell Brian Coogler, he would have done that.
yeah,
His mindset was different. It wasn't to hide it. It was that, I'm going to beat it. Maybe that was the approach he had.
yeah.
We don't know.
Exactly. There's
We don't
just
know.
so much we don't know, don't need to know.
Yeah.
Not our business. But well, we're coming up on your kind of sweet spot for hour 15. So do we want to do topic 2? Because I'm fine with leaving it here.
Uh, let's leave it here. I think
Yeah,
this is a good way to end, just because we gave our opinions. We talked.
yeah.
Obviously we both were able to dip in a little bit of our personal life and our struggles with our health.
Hmm.
But I think this is. I want to be able to go out on a strong note and say that I'm gonna miss. Like, I don't know the guy personally, but I'm gonna miss him, seeing him on screen. Where we go from here, with whatever Marvel decides to do, I think that they will be very smart and
Yeah,
respectful with how they handle it, whether it be recasting. I've seen someone out there throw out the idea of, hey, why don't we? How would people feel if they recast it with Michael B. Jordan? I'm like, hey, that would actually be a good idea, because I think the fans would respect that, because they all love Michael B. Jordan.
yeah. It's
Um,
curious to see, like, because they've really leaned into it's a living world kind of mentality of the MCU. So I'm wondering if maybe they'll just not. I think they maybe open Black Panther 2 with a funeral. Like, be kind of meta with it, Meta in like an actual, like, serious grappling with it kind of way,
sure,
to like let the audience kind of grieve it watching the movie, you know, instead of just out in the ether on the internet.
yeah,
Like, that would be a really, really powerful way to start Black Panther 2. Not that, of course, I know anything about making movies, but like, I could see them doing that, and I'd be bawling within 10 minutes of that movie, and I'd
well, hell,
probably
the
not
the
stop.
I'm not gonna lie, I got emotional with the Marvel signature at the beginning of Captain Marvel with a "Thank you, Stan." I got emotional. I'm not gonna lie.
Exactly. Like,
So yeah,
and that was just the guy behind the scenes. Like, I think if you're going to have one of your main characters, pass away, off screen, of course, not great, but I mean, your actor was larger than life, you know?
yeah,
So I think you gotta maybe pay a little reverence to that and let the other characters in the story take on the load of where that side of the universe is gonna go. That's my perspective, though. That's probably how I would, if I was like writing it, because I've done some like just light writing, but that's probably what I would do. But that's going to be definitely a farther and less important conversation than, of course,
yeah,
dealing with loss. But it'll be
yes,
one I'm sure we'll discuss here on the show if the news drops. Within, I guess I would assume, year and a half, 2 years, we'll know what the heck they're doing, because by
yeah.
then pre-production will be done and casting done and all that. So there'll be news aplenty on that front. But yeah, leaving it here on a note, just check in with people. Don't assume the worst. Let people just live. Is not. It's just good life advice. Let alone if someone's actually dealing with major health issues. So
Yeah, I think for me, it's one of those. It's like I said, it's a very sobering reminder of
yeah,
life is fleeting. But I think at the same time, for me, it's one of those things where, as a moviegoer and a movie lover, that hey, you know, Robin Williams, one of my favorites, passed away. We have the ability to have them on tape to watch their
yeah,
legacy.
yeah.
You know, they may be gone, but their legacy remains. You know, even
Another
as short as
similar
they may have cut.
superhero one, like Christopher Reeve, new
Yeah,
Superman, and then the accident happened, and he couldn't ever act again.
yeah,
Outside of random small roles like stuff on Smallville, which was
sure.
very impactful. So yeah, I mean, I don't even. I mean, other than moving on, like, do we want to? What are we watching? I mean, obviously, The Boys. That's going
Yep.
to be something we talk about next time out, which will be, roughly speaking, mid September, like week of the 21st, basically, would be when we
Sure.
record episode Dose. Anything coming down the pipe other than The Boys for you?
No, I'm going to. Well, I'm still watching Lovecraft Country. Great show.
I need to start
Um,
that.
you need
I
to
want to
start
start
that.
Raised by Wolves.
Okay, you got. I mean, you have to watch Lovecraft Country. It's a really, like, the first episode's a lot slower to get to the point, but by the end of the first episode, you're like, okay, all right, we're here. Um, but Lovecraft Country. Also, I have yet to see the second season of Doom Patrol.
Oh, it's
So
damn good.
I need to
Sadly,
catch
one episode shortened because of COVID, so
Okay.
the finale
Okay,
couldn't
so
happen.
I do wanna say this. So I actually made the switch because I've had HBO Go for a long time now, and because it's just a really stupid system that Warner Brothers has set up
So
now, I
fragmented.
I didn't have access to HBO Max because of my HBO Go account, so I've canceled my HBO Go, signed up for HBO Max. Unfortunately, it's not on Fire or Roku right now, but I have a fucking PlayStation, so we're all good.
Nice. That's the way to do it.
I mean, you have to have contingencies, man, and that's my
Yeah, gotta
contingency.
back up.
I haven't finished Harley Quinn. I need to finish Harley Quinn and season 2 of Doom Patrol. So hopefully, when the next time we sit down and talk, I'll give you my thoughts on Harley Quinn and Doom Patrol season 2.
Excellent. I will look forward to that. So, obviously, you at home, if that's something that looks forward to you, definitely hit that subscribe. Definitely stay in, keep up with the content, because we'll be putting these out on this channel every other week, give or take. Once we record, there's really not much editing I do. So we record, I render it out just to make sure clipping it out works, and then I just upload it right to my channel. So, subscribe, stay up to date. We'll post it on our Twitters. I'm at MrWartburg, and you're at It's Mr. Fusion,
That's correct.
right? You've changed it a few times. But
Just like 5 or 6 times.
yeah, just a few times. I've been Mr. Wartburg for forever. So I've been, yeah. There was a time where I was like briefly thinking about changing it because it's technically probably a trademark name if I ever wanted to make anything via a brand. But fuck it, whatever. Wartburg's the name of a castle in Germany, as far as I'm concerned, not Wartburg
Yep.
College.
Yep.
But anyway, that's our show for our very first episode. Thank you, Fusion, for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Been a pleasure.
And thank you guys for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Bye.